in LiveOps, you have to be like the Navy SEALs. Like sometimes you're going to be jumping out of a helicopter, sometimes you'll be in the dark, sometimes you'll be diving. Like be adaptive, and like don't think that you'll be walking a threaded path. Like you need to be ready to adapt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's first ever episode of the Mastering Retention Roundtable. This is super fun. I feel like we've got an all-star team of panelists on today. So some of my favorite and smartest people in the industry that I know. I can't wait to hear all the great things that they have to say today. But maybe we can just start by doing some rounds of introductions and what games you're currently playing and what keeps you playing it. Adam, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello, everyone. It's really great to be here. So my name is Adam. I work at Zepto Lab, a studio in Barcelona right now, and I'm a live operations manager there. To answer your question, what am I playing right now? Actually, last week I just found this game called Rush Royale, which I was super intrigued on. And I was actually I was deconstructing it until today when my friend told me that it's actually based on another game called Random Dice. So I need to do some more research there, and I'm also checking out Genshin Impact.
Good one. Ethan?
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm Ethan Levy. I am currently the executive producer for Tetris at Network, where we do the Tetris mobile game and a couple other Tetris things. I'm mostly doing Tetris Clash right now. And then I spend about a little bit of my time each week on the Network Scale platform. That's our publishing platform, where we take the same tools and technology that allowed us to grow Legendary way past $250 million in profit, and we publish other games that are out there that have great KPIs and help bring them new players profitably. So I'm always kind of scouting for new games for the NSP and trying to make connections and talking about it, writing case studies, and also that's like the small part of my job while I'm mainly doing Tetris. And actually, I wrote a case study for one of our 10 published games, Chaos Road, this week. And it's really fun pick up and play Spy Hunter with one finger. And so I like it because it's not, the other game I'm playing is not an NSP game. It's Shining Beyond, which is a great gacha game with incredible progression depth. But every time I open it up, that's like 45 minutes before I've even made all the little red dots go away. And so Chaos Road has been fun to just like pick it up, play with one finger, 5 minutes, put it down. It's got great Spy Hunter vibes. So it's been a fun game.
Awesome. Antanina?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. So I'm Antanina Livingston, and I'm currently working for Call of Duty Mobile. I'm managing planning and implementation team within our live services. And we're engaged in content planning, LiveOps calendar, as well as directly configuring all those events using the variety of tools. So making sure that the game is all set. What I'm currently playing is actually depends on the device I'm having in hand. So on the mobile, I usually play either my game, Call of Duty Mobile, or I play PUBG, Free Fire, Brawl Stars, so kind of like similar titles. And then on console, I play right now mostly Cold War and Fortnite. On my tablet, which I usually have next to my bedside tables, I normally play Gardenscapes because this is my go-to bed game. So,
just 24 hours of gaming for you.
No, right?
You're living the life.
I'm just switching between, and then I also have Steam on my PC, on my laptop, and then I'm kind of trying to. I'm looking, for the weekend to try this Valheim because everyone keeps talking about it. So I'm kind of like want to put my hands on that too.
Wow.
I'm never on the latest and greatest with console games. I'm right now in the world of console games. I'm on Doom Eternal, so I'm always far behind, but only playing the best.
I'm very bad with controllers though, so it's just like when I'm playing, it's almost like, oh my god.
Antanina, I
Yeah.
think you just made the best pitch for people to enter the games industry, because basically it sounds like you're playing games all day, right?
Mostly, yeah, but it's just basically one game at a time, and it's not like every day everything. So yeah, it's more like what you feel up to, like yeah.
It's market research, you got to understand what else is out there so you can figure out what to give to your players. So yeah,
Exactly,
I like
exactly.
that.
Yeah, benchmarking. I love that.
Yeah.
I actually just tried Valheim, and I'm usually way behind as well. But some of my friends, we do this Mantastic Monday with some college buddies where we all like play games together, and we all tried Valheim last night. It was definitely interesting. It reminds me a lot of Conan Exiles. Better in some ways, like a little glitchy in some others, but it's early access and stuff, so we kind of threw it out. But we had a good time with it. I definitely say check it out. The game that I've been playing most recently is getting back into World of Warcraft again, but actually playing with my wife, who I never thought would like play World of Warcraft. But we've been like having an adventure together, playing an hour here or there. So nothing too serious, but it's fun to like play along with someone and like level up together and overcome challenges together. So it's a fun one. That's great. All right, let's move on to our first question. How will LiveOps be different in 2021? Ethan, do you want to take this one?
Sure. I'll go first. I think the biggest thing that is going to change LiveOps is the death of IDFA, because that is going to impact the top of the funnel for the majority of LiveOps games. I mean, if you're Call of Duty Mobile or even Tetris, you don't necessarily have the organic download problem that a game like Legendary might have. But when the top of the funnel changes, I think everything is going to change. And it's a little hard to predict exactly how. But my hope is that, how I think it's going to play out is that with less precise targeting, we will have to depend on broader audiences. And as we depend on broader audiences, we will have to focus a lot more on inflecting long-term retention, especially of spenders, and not focus as much on day-to-day spend within a particular event of spenders. That's kind of my hope for how like very live ops heavy games will change. The reason that's my hope is that I think that it's very hard. I mean, at least at a company like Network, and I assume with y'all on the rest of the panel, like it's hard when you have day-to-day revenue targets or monthly revenue targets that are important to hit. And because of your live op flexibility, you're able to make changes on the fly. It's very easy to focus on today's revenue, tomorrow's revenue. And when you do that, sometimes you lose sight of long-term retention. To me, long-term retention is just about delighting your players. And so I've always felt that like, if you can just focus on the long-term retention of players, you'll have more delighted players and you might make less revenue this month, but you'll make more revenue next year, right? So that's kind of in my head, that's how it plays out. It'll be really interesting, but I think that, the majority of the free-to-play games I've worked on are not Tetris and are dependent on user acquisition to bring in new players. And I think that IDFA change is gonna be the big shift.
Antanina, any additional thoughts?
I definitely agree with IDFA adventure, that we all gonna get into. But I also, I don't think that it's actually gonna be that crucial, and I also think that the industry will adapt, especially live ops. And even now, I was surfing this website. It's called like No IDFA, No Problem, or something like that. When the best minds, come together to brainstorm what to do with that, and I think we'll actually find new ways how to deal with that. And so. And especially for those games that are super dependent on that. So I think they will find ways out. And I think that's about the industry. We're always adjusting. We're always adjusting to the external factors, right, that are coming. And also, like finding new ways how to succeed. On the other hand, I think for live ops, I think live ops will become more sophisticated in terms of segmentation, more like data-driven decisions, right? And so I think we're gonna see more targeted offers or like segmented offers like that, right? So, and I already see that in the games, more like personalization, both, you know, from the platform, right? When they do the picks for you, for example, right? Or like your YouTube channel, right? So kind of picks up what you want, what you're gonna watch or suggest something for you. So I think something like that will also transition to LiveOps, and I think the game will be more personalized. So, and yeah, that's, I think, the trends. Yeah.
Cool. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Well, you're putting me in a very tough spot because Ethan and
You
Antanina
took the
basically
most.
covered it. Yeah, you guys basically said it. But yeah, I think I have to agree, right? I mean, I think IDFA was the first thing that came to everybody's mind, and well, I think it for sure it will affect niche games that have a particular audience in mind. But generally speaking, I think and I definitely agree with Antonina that I'm optimistic, and I believe that this is, even though it feels like a step backwards, I think this will be a step forwards in the way like companies will have to adapt to the situation of how to get the right users for their game, right? And I think this will be interesting to observe because we got a lot of game companies got into the habit of developing a feature and then finding the target audience for it, right? But now I think it will be a little bit different because we will not be able to target the exact audience as much, if at all, right? So we will have to think of designing the right feature for a much broader audience. I think at least this will probably be the first effect that I think we'll see. And secondly, I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the days, like games used to be promoted like even in cinemas, right? Like back in the days of product marketing. And I think we will have to resurrect some of those ancient channels. And this will be like so interesting to see, like mobile games being, promoted in via these like traditional channels that we haven't been seeing in the last years.
That's great.
Just one other thing that occurred to me as we talked, with I don't really have my toes too deep into the water of hyper casual. It'll be interesting to see with all the enormous success of hyper casual. I know that those games tend to have very short shelf lives per player, and I'll be interested to see if someone is able to make kind of a step change function for the games in their portfolio by giving more metagame and bringing some of the live ops tactics to hyper casual. That could just be a complete mismatch for the audience, but it'll be really interesting to see if anybody tries to experiment with that to try and make their games stand out or have a longer retention profile than the other similar hyper casual games in the market.
Yeah, I think I've definitely talked to a number of hyper casual publishers, and it's definitely something that folks are thinking about. I think certain games it fits in better than others, but I do think that we're going to see in 2021 a few games start to implement live ops better. Like in my mind, the best example of a hyper casual game with live ops is Subway Surfers. And, it's a very hyper casual-esque game, and they've added a few things, but really what they do is they completely change the game every month and they put it in like a new city or a new atmosphere or wherever. And that keeps players coming back. And I think that's a great example of what could be done in hyper casual. So I'm excited to see what happens there. So Antanina, one thing you kind of commented on was, a more general or a broader audience leading to like more personalized experiences. But how would we actually go about doing that or creating these kind of personalized experiences for players such that we can have that long-term retention, but also kind of balancing it in the fact that like, if you get some offer for $5 for 100 coins and a really cool gun, and I get the same offer for like $15 and we're in the same guild and we happen to chat about it, I'm probably going to be pretty upset that I didn't get the same thing that you did, even if it's, personalized and stuff. So how do you kind of balance the complexity of creating a personalized experience, or how do you even get to that level, I guess?
I would say, in terms of prices, right? So they don't necessarily have to be different prices there, right? So we're not talking about that. We're more talking about like your experience in the game in terms of like, try this, for example, right? Or like in the shooters, right? So for example, they offer you like, get this character, or like try this weapon or something, right? Or in terms of like, gardenscapes or something, or like, you're progressing or something, right? And they're saying, hey, so here are like all these things that you can get. Here's like the offer for you, right? So back in like uh, previous titles that I work with, we also used to have like a very smart machine doing all the logic for that, right? And so basically saying like, okay, if you have a certain item but you don't have like, I don't know, let's take an example in Free Fire, for example. You have this character, but there is also like a animal that goes with that, right? So you can also offer this like, hey, you have this one, right? But why don't you try this one as well, right? So it's the same, I think it's the same principles as used in traditional commercial offers from the stores, or from like other industries. I don't know, like when you go shopping, right? So they also kind of like walk you through this personalized thing. At the same time, I think when you go to the platform, right, or for example to the store, right now we also see that they already started this personalization, right? So you already see the picks that you're supposed to see, basically. I'm not sure like what is the exact logic there, right? But at the same time, they also analyze what games you play, right? So what can we recommend you? What can you install? Or for example, what event can you try, right? So using the LiveOps card or something. So this is something that I think would be like personalization. Maybe we can go to like, personalized events, I don't know, like depending on your difficulty level. I've seen some titles that actually have this.
That's something we've definitely talked about a lot, right? Is how do I don't know if I'm curious if this jives with your experience at all, but like on Legendary, a lot of times it can feel like we're making events only for the top players, right? And we've talked about, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could easily serve our highest guild members this event and somebody new this event, and prove that over time that their retention is going to be better because they had an easier on ramp. Like personalized offers can mean personalized game content, not just personalized store offers.
And also, sorry.
Sorry, I cut you off. I thought you were done.
Please and I mean, also like, let's say it depends on the user experience, right? So what Ethan is saying, let's say if you are a new user, right? So you're probably like a rookie, right? So we're probably gonna offer you something that is a little bit easier so that you can progress to the game and kind of like feel what is it like. But if let's say you're like a return user, right? So we may offer you something different because you already know the game, right? And so we need to make sure that you stay and play. So this is kind of also different experiences, and they can be also different logic behind it.
Yeah. Just to build on what you guys said, it's so interesting because last week, no, it was actually 2 weeks ago, I was having a brief talk at the PGC, and I introduced this concept called reactive operations. And one of the key takeaways was like, it depends how you define live operations, right? And to, I suppose, the majority of people, it means like launching offers, launching various types of events, and just kind of showcasing that the game is alive and kicking, right? And provide this variety and whatnot. But what I was talking about is a different lens to see live ops, is that it's a very formidable way to fine tune your product to its kind of ideal product market fit, right? Because when you soft launch, you obviously get a lot of data, but I mean, you can just get so much data, right? And live operations is basically one of the quickest ways how you can adapt your product once you have gone global and you have collected your golden cohort of players. And it's so funny you mentioned this, because this is exactly what I was just researching lately, that obviously we in majority of the games offers tend to kind of target and differentiate in between various types of cohorts, right? So you're gonna show a conversion offer to a new player, but you're not gonna show a cheap conversion offer to a player who's already engaged. And I think that most obvious step in live ops is to have these personalized events, because you don't necessarily always want to throw new players who are 1 or 2 days in the game and they're still not engaged, and maybe they're just giving you kind of a chance, like, to convince them, like, yeah, this is a game that I want to play. And imagine an event triggers and these players are thrown in with the killer whales, they're going to have probably a very bad time. So you're risking, a lot of churn there. So I think this is to me, the most logical step that we'll be seeing very soon. And I think it's so interesting, that you can have events that are fine-tuned for the players, let's say, demand. And obviously, I think machine learning will play a huge part here.
Well, yeah, that's really interesting. I was just kind of putting myself in the player's shoe as you guys were, speaking, and I was thinking through, if I'm, there's a certain thing that I'm trying to do in most games at any point in time, right? So if I'm playing like an RPG, maybe it's like collecting 100 hero chips so I can upgrade, my one hero. But at the core, if you're really digging into my data and what I'm doing, you should be able to tell that I'm trying to collect this specific hero chips. So in one of the next events, if the top reward tier is like the 50 hero chips that I need that are remaining, that's personal to me, but that's valuable. And I don't think I would be upset if, my guild member has, a different reward for something that they've been working towards. But it feels really custom, and it's like allowing me to engage in the game the way that I want to engage in that game. So, really deeply knowing and understanding your players and figuring out how to deliver the content that they want seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny that you mentioned this, because I think they did not the exact same thing, but they kind of applied a similar principle in Clash Royale, where the machine learning would be checking which cards you were requesting from your clanmates, so they knew which cards to kind of show you in the store. And then I don't know if this is true, but I suppose it could also affect which offers you were getting, maybe like the dynamic offers.
So they claim it that way. As a long-term Clash Royale player, I never understood. It's like, I've been collecting this same card for like weeks. Why am I still getting all these other things that have nothing to do with what I want? So I feel like they should be able to, but I've never actually experienced it.
Maybe the machine learning algorithm knows not to give it to you.
There you go. There you go.
So
this
that
is
you
the
keep
dark
playing,
side of the mobile game industry.
Yeah.
Optimizing for retention there, yeah.
Who knows what variant you're in that multi-armed bandit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if they mark you as a payer once, they are very hesitant to give you what you need, Tom.
Yeah, but I like the idea that you mentioned that, we're not only talking about the offers, right? But we're also talking about the actual engagement events, right? So that how players can stay and play, and how can we retain them better, so that they actually have interest in something to go for, and not only like, bombard them with the offers and say like, hey, buy this, buy that. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I think to a lot of people, LiveOps is just, offers and events, but I think there's a much bigger product manager perspective, and I think all LiveOps people should need to put their product hat on and actually, make meaningful LiveOps choices, because at the end of the day, each type of ops should be kind of meaningful, right? I think we talked about this with Tom last week, where we kind of discussed that, launching ops just for the sake of having ops is probably not a good idea, because there's always an inherent risk in anything you launch, right? And that risk can be you're either burning your players out, or something can always go wrong. Oh, please, let's discuss this topic one day, like the pains of live operations. So you should have a clear goal, and
everybody puts a brown bag over their head to anonymously give the worst.
Yeah. Like my colleague once said, like, if you're in live ops and you haven't caused such a mess with like a misconfiguration or something at least once in your life, that you cause like a revolution in some country, you're not in operations. Like, you can do better.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Adam, do you have any other predictions for LiveOps in 2021 that we should add?
Well, I think everything was covered. I think IDFA was quite specific, and I think we all agree that. I think that definitely for me it was like the first thing that popped up when we discussed this topic. But I think Antanina nailed it when she said, like, I think it also as a result of IDFA coming into effect, LiveOps will need to be more elegant, machine learning, and basically more reactive, which is also a topic we discussed before. Uh, but again, it depends on how you define live ops, right? And I think from my perspective, if you see through the lens of a product manager, that's definitely the way to go. And it will need to be, I think, more reactive to the market, especially because of the unpredictability of the user acquisition that we'll be facing very soon.
Yeah. I have something to add too. It's like it's interesting whenever I talk to someone, right? So they always mention like, oh, we had this meeting with my guys, right? And we played this game, right? So you just mentioned that, Tom. And the same I had with my colleagues, for example, right? So we just gathered together and played. And so I think last year we saw a huge success of Among Us. And right now I also see that many games are trying to implement that Among Us features or something like Among Us based features to the games. So I think one of the trends that we're going to see is that we'll see more like social features and basically for the events or for the games trying to unite people more so that they can even remotely play with each other and stay in touch. And so I think that's going to be I think it's a good direction that games are going to. And also I think that's right now one of the like best things that we can do being in lockdown. It's just like to call each other and just play together. So that's why I think that's one of the directions that we can move in 2021.
That's great. Ethan, anything to add?
Just in building on that in Tetris, we right before we did global launch, we built a feature called Tetris Together, and I wish the UX was better because it's a difficult thing to pull off, but it's you can send somebody a text and invite them to a room to play multiplayer Tetris with you, just if they haven't installed, by tapping on the link, and you can send it to anywhere on the share sheet, but you can send it to a lot of people. And once you get in the room, you have voice chat. So like we built hanging out, playing Tetris with other people. And sometimes, when testing that on the team, it's really fun. I think Tetris is a harder hangout game than others because it requires a lot of concentration once the speed gets high. But it's definitely, I know I've had fun in Tetris Together. I've had fun in Clubhouse, which is not a game, but an experience. But definitely the longer lockdown goes on, the more I want to talk to people.
Yeah.
That aren't the 5 people in my house that 3 of them under 5. So
that's great. Cool. Well, that is fantastic. I'd love to move on to, what makes a great LiveOps team, in terms of skill set, mindset, culture. Antanina, would you like to lead this one off?
I think it's always the people. So of course you need the tools, you need like a right mindset, right? But at the same time, it's the talent that you attract to your team, and that's the most important. And yeah, I think that's what really makes a good one. Then of course, it just depends on the team. Because I think the LiveOps strategy also makes sense. It's how you see where the game is developing in the long run, right? But also what you're doing now and who's actually taking care of the game right now. So this is also important. But again, for me, it's always people. So
cool. Ethan?
Yeah, I look to the legendary team, which I haven't been a part of for I think it's been 3 years since I worked on Legendary, maybe a little longer at this point. And the people who are working to keep that game alive and fresh for players are super talented, and I think doing a really world-class job. And the things that I think in terms, like, one, broad skill set and perspective. So it's not just product managers, but artists and marketers, CS, QA, all are considered part of the LiveOps puzzle in engineering. And they all have to work together to bring new content to players every week and keep it fresh and exciting and keep people entertained, and work and collaborate together. I think there's more product management to marketing collaboration now on Legendary than there was 3 years ago when I was on it. And that's been really critical to just keeping it alive. I think flexibility is really important. Foresight and experience, like having the foresight and experience when you're building the features and building the tools. And Tom, this is a lot of what we talked about when I was on the podcast, of like building things to be operated live flexibly and quickly. And then really a spirit of ownership in the company, so that when something goes wrong on production at 10 at night, that somebody doesn't feel like they have to make a lot of cool calls, that they can fix things or change things. And as long as they're kind of coming from the right place. And the, what's the last one? So my mind, I said, cleverness. I think cleverness is super important. And we see this all the time from the engineers, because it's like, either there's a bug in production or a bug in the thing we just submitted to Apple that we only just fixed. And like, I feel like you're always doing something with config and with settings and like, can I hack the localization file? Like the number of times we've fixed issues that are live without a client update, just like cleverness on the part of the engineers really comes through time and time again to save live ops. So.
Or the right tools, if your tools allow to fix that things live, so that's also helpful.
Yeah, Ethan, on top of what you just said, I think this is the reason why it's sometimes beneficial to have lazy people in the team, because they'll find the quickest way to fix an issue.
Yeah.
It may not be the most efficient one, but it'll be the quickest one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that is that I think you need to have a high level of organization or self-discipline, because also most of the times there's so many things going on, and it's so easy to get overwhelmed and kind of go crazy.
Yeah.
But it's you need to stay focused, and see what's going on clearly, right? And make sure that all the events go live at the same time, and then at the time when they're supposed to, and then also keep track of your inventory, right? Because if you work with like big games and like huge content, right? So it's so easy to make a mistake in configurations, right? Or give like the same reward twice or something like that. So it's just super easy. And like, it also affects your economy, basically. If you're like in one event, you give like for instead of like, some item, right? You just give like, I don't know, something that you can buy in the store, and you're like, oops. So this is like a high level of self-organization. And then also I agree with the skill set, but I also think you need to have a right mindset as well. I think LiveOps requires people with like a very reactive, personality, right? And I think, like I agree, it's good to have lazy people, but at the same time, you need to have like people who are really think fast, like make decisions fast, right? Because this is like the fastest pacing environment ever. From like in comparison, things will happen, right? And so you kind of need to think sharp, right? And also like don't panic, and try to find the solutions, what to do on the go, and basically on fix something live. It happens. So
I couldn't agree more with what you just said. As a matter of fact, whenever we get a new hire in the LiveOps team, we developed a set of principles, which is like the biggest cliche, right? A team can do. But in this case, I think it's actually quite important, because usually what we tell them is like, the first thing we tell them, like in LiveOps, you have to be like the Navy SEALs. Like sometimes you're going to be jumping out of a helicopter, sometimes you'll be in the dark, sometimes you'll be diving. Like be adaptive, and like don't think that you'll be walking a threaded path. Like you need to be ready to adapt. And another principle, which I think is true for any live ops, is that be bold, but don't be reckless. And the reason why we always mention this is because there is this God that every product manager needs to worship. And we call this God the God of production. And the god of production likes to punish cocky people. And this is where you draw the line between bold and reckless. If you
I
want to
love
push
that.
something to production and you've done it 100 times and you think you don't need to test it, and you push it to production, the god of production is going to see this and you're getting cocky and he's going to give you a lesson. There is going to be something that you missed and it's going to be pushed. So be bold, try new stuff, but don't get reckless because things like to go wrong in production.
Yeah.
And the god of production doesn't like cocky people, you know? So we definitely have a couple of principles that we like to abide by, but ultimately the way we see it, or the way I see it, is like being in the live ops is like being in the trenches. Like you need to be attentive, you need to focus, and like Antanina said, couldn't put it better myself. Don't panic, hold the line, and don't worry, everything will be fine in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To build on your god of production, I think I'll add one more trait. A great live ops team always QAs its own work on prod. Always. The number of
Yeah.
times that I've seen people that like, because when I'm in the EP role, I get to no longer be on the live team, but instead on the accountability team. And the number of times I've caught somebody not QAing their stuff, or somebody else actually, like Christian, who leads the Tetris team now, has been great about that. And just like calling people out like, hey, you didn't check this thing and this graphic is messed up on prod and you need to go fix it right now. Like, so that's a great, don't be cocky. Always check your work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know I've done some experiments where, even when you're wholeheartedly trying to, be data driven and follow everything. And I remember one experiment, it looked good. It was like a 20% boost, but somehow behind the scene, it had actually lowered like revenue on both groups by like 40%. And so even though it looked like it was a boost, it like definitely negatively affected everything. And so we rolled that out, and like a few weeks later, it's like, what is going on here? And so like it is hard and it is challenging, and you just got to move fast and be willing to react. And I think if you're not ready for change, live ops probably isn't a good space for you. But if you can, always have that reactive mindset, be able to be proactive, it can be a lot of fun to get to change and improve and to learn consistently. So here's a little variation of that question. Let's say I have a 3-person gaming company. I've got like a marketer, a dev, and an artist, and I've made a game, and it's taken off. Like it's going well. It's got positive ROAS, and I want to start adding live ops to it. What is the minimum set of people that I would need on a team to be able to actually run live ops on a game? For folks that are maybe getting started and aren't quite as experienced as your companies are, what would be the minimum team that you guys would need to have to be able to do something?
I would say, if you depending on the company size, right? But from what you described, right? So I assume that's going to be a super small game, right? And I don't really think that it needs to have a dedicated live ops team. So what you can do is actually there are a bunch of like services that provides the live ops for your game, right? So maybe you might as well just use those services and you will be better with that, right? Because they also provide you the analytics, right? They also provides like the ability to do like A/B testing, something, run live ops for you and everything. So maybe it's going to be your choice. It really depends on like, your budget also, right? And the size of the game, the size of the company, right? Or again, like, if you decide to like build a team, that can be one person, like one person can wear many hats. And I've seen I've seen those like one person teams as well, right? Being like a producer, community manager, right? So like person responsible for planning, configurations, everything, right? And even for like several titles, but it all depends on the size of the game, your budget, size of the company, right? And also like available tools, because if you don't have anything, right, you maybe better be with some external partner or like partially, their services that they're provided.
Cool.
I think when you're a three-person studio and you want to introduce some live ops into your game, then I mean you may hire some additional people to be more focused on live ops. But I would in that case I would also say everybody is a part of live ops, because it's not just the designers and operators, but it's for a large part, it will be also your server developers. If things go wrong and the designer or the person responsible for the conflicts is not able to pinpoint what's going on, then you need to involve the server developer. And more of a question of skill set, which is undeniably also important. It's also a mindset. This actually happens a lot of times that people don't know what to prioritize, right? Like if a developer is working on something and he has his deadline, and a designer comes to him and says, hey man, I think we have a problem, we need to take a look at it. Without the experience, people don't know where to put their focus, and they sometimes tend to go through this classic loophole, like, oh, I need to talk to my lead, like what should I be doing, because I told them I'll get this done today. And the mindset should be, I mean, depends of course on the company culture, but in Zepto Lab, things that are on fire take precedence always, because players are being affected.
It's a good mindset. Ethan, what kind of minimum team would you want if you had to run LiveOps?
Yeah, so I read a lot of books about comedy, stand-up comedians, filmmaking. I just find the whole world very interesting, and especially because there actually aren't that many like books and documentaries and stuff about game making. I think there's a lot of lessons there. And there's this book called Like Brothers by Mark and Jay Duplass that they've acted, written, produced, directed together and apart, movies, series, everything. And their first two movies, they had a philosophy called like the available materials philosophy, right? They made two indie movies, I think Comfy Couch and Baghead, I want to say are the names of them. And they did them each for like $10,000 or so, made in like five or 7 days. And like their whole philosophy is like, what are the available materials we have? What are the people? What are the sets, the location? Like, what are the things we have that we can use right now? Now let's make sure we make a movie. We plan a movie that can be made with those materials. And I try and carry that philosophy with me to game making a lot. Because I've been in a couple different studios where there are always different teams fighting for resources. Everyone is always trying to hire talented people. It's always hard to fill spots with good people. You know, if you can have a Unity technical artist spot open for a year, you know, that's not uncommon, and that can be a critical role for LiveOps. And that's the same for like, it can take you a long time to find the right CS person if your game's really specialized, right? I don't think there's a single person or role you can take for granted. So I would look at that. What I would ask the question differently. As a designer, I try and always design what I have for what I can pull off, and always try and create as much momentum as I can with the available materials. So I would approach it the other way around, which is not who do I need to do LiveOps, but what is the best LiveOps experience I can deliver with these people who work these hours, with this funding, with these tools, right? And then once you've figured that out and you run that, then the question is, how could I make this even better for players if I had person X, Y, and Z? Now let's go find them.
That's great.
I love that. That's a really good point.
Me too. And, you know, like, I think, guys, you mentioned something that, you know, basically utilizing the present team. What threw me off in that question is that, you know, when we're saying about like one developer, right? Like one marketer or something. So one developer, right? So that's the Adam, to your point about the priority, right? So if, let's say, okay, we need something for LiveOps, right? And so we have to understand that if he's usually working the sprint, right? So if we want to draw his attention to LiveOps, it means that some of the features that he's working at won't be delivered, right? Because he spent this sprint or something working on something else. So that's, I think, yeah, like it's important to analyze what you have, you know, utilize like at maximum what you have, but also, yeah, like think of, you know, how can it impact, you know, your present development cycle, and also, you know, what LiveOps you can actually, what scale of LiveOps you want, and imagine.
Yeah, that's really great. Cool. Well, let's move on to our second to last question, which is, what advice would you give to your former self? Adam, would you like to take this one first?
What advice would I give to my former self? And this is in relation to LiveOps?
Yeah, it
Or
could be live ops or anything in game, you know. You can
Learn to play the guitar. That's not.
okay, let me think. What advice would I give to myself? Um, Let me give me a couple of seconds. I need to actually think about this one. Yeah, I guess embrace the unknown. Don't be anxious, and be open-minded. I think this is super crucial when you're designing and operating. You know, not getting the best results on the first iteration might not mean a bad result forever. It's if nothing else, get some learning from it and keep adapting. And like I said, you need to be bold. Don't be reckless, but be bold. Usually it's not a good practice to try to copy what other companies are doing, what other games are doing. Your game is there's definitely a unique selling point that you should be leveraging, and the fact that one thing works in a game doesn't necessarily mean that it will work in your game. So definitely don't be afraid to explore the unknown and keep trying new stuff. You know, getting it right takes time and some iterations.
cool. Ethan?
Well, the podcast I did with you, we talked a lot about designing for flexibility, designing for live ops. So I'm not going to retread that ground, but that's definitely a piece of it. What I've been thinking about lately is within the realm of free to play and live ops driven games is how do you architect a 10-year economy? Like how, if I'm on day one of the project, what are the set of questions I need to answer that I'll be glad I answered when I got to the 5th anniversary and the 10th anniversary? And so, I mean, look, you can look at a game like Legendary. Legendary is the biggest success story that I've worked on so far, right? We've in 2019, we said $250 million in revenue, which I'm sure Call of Duty makes that in like a day. But, it's been going live for almost 5 years. It's done a lot of revenue, kept players really happy. And, it's going to be the 5-year anniversary of worldwide launch later this year. And I can look back 5 years ago and say, wow, I wish me, James, and Hide had spent 2 full days in a room talking about the elder game experiences we wish our players were having in year 5 at a high level, not like full feature specs, but like there should be this sort of activity. There should be this sort of activity. There should be this sort of activity. And in Legendary, particularly, that would have forced us to examine our hero stats and build our hero stats differently for a game that had, the game still has depth. I wish it had more elder game depth this far into its life. We were never able to pull off a real PvP system because of the stats. And like, that's a foundational mistake that we didn't think about. And there are a couple others like that we didn't think about deeply enough. And so this is definitely not like a beginner game dev piece of advice, but definitely like on a more experienced team, if you're on your, 3rd or 4th live ops product, because, on my first one doing Dragon Age Legends at EA, if you told me to build a 10-year game economy, that would have sent me into an anxiety spiral for 6 months. I never would have recovered from that. But like now that I've done it, this is kind of the thing, like from the start, have that plan for what your players are doing in the game economy 5 years in, 10 years in, and make sure that your foundation of your progression, of your stats, of your core gameplay enables you to have that longevity.
I think that's great. I actually have talked to a few studios recently. They're like, kind of the earlier mobile type studios have been around like 12 years or whatnot. And you talk to them like, what is your goal with like one of your next games? And it's like, we really want to launch a game that is, live and still, going after 10 years. And I think it's really hard to think that far in the future, especially when you're planning from day one. You're just trying to soft launch something and get it working. But I do think that is key of, you've got to, plan for things to work while still trying to move fast with your prototyping. And I think that could be so crucial. Antanina, what advice would you have for your former self?
Yeah, I was just sitting and like thinking. I mean, I tend to not regret about things, right? Because I think like everything that you do in life, so this at that point become useful to you, right? So it happened for a reason, right? um and also I think like, yeah, I can say like, hey, maybe like I should have done this and that, but I think the biggest thing is that as much as I like working in gaming industry right now, so I wish like I also went to study something like game design earlier, right, or something like that, so that would be, I think, helpful. But at the same time, saying that, I also tell myself, okay, what prevents me from doing it now, right? So that's what I'm kind of like, looking at some skills that, let's say, I feel like, oh, maybe I should have studied before. I'm like, why can't I do it now, right? So, and that's what I'm trying to implement. Same at work, so something that I'm thinking like, oh, we should have done this or that, and I'm like, why can we still do it, right? So maybe there's another way, but maybe we can still implement it. So I kind of think, yeah, I'm more less regretting about the past, but more like looking towards the future, So I think that's the good
It's a very
mindset.
healthy mindset.
Yeah, exactly. don't like, yeah,
You're
how to
not
say
just
it.
rattled every moment of every day with anxiety and
Exactly.
regrets about the past. It must be
Exactly.
nice. It must be real nice.
Yeah.
So if you take nothing else away from today, take Antonina's mindset.
Can I build on one
Positive
thing?
thinking.
Yeah, building on what Ethan said, like, thinking 5 years ahead when you're designing something, that actually reminded me of one key lesson I would have written on my forehead if I could 6 years ago. And that is that the perfect balance doesn't exist. Like, I guess, can you guys, like, when you're designing something and you can have a really good balancing done in a day, but you can get it done like amazingly good in 10 days, and you can't get a good night's sleep because that one variable or that one formula just isn't right, and you spend so much time. Don't do that. Don't do that. Release as soon as
Yeah, it's
possible
it's
with good
evolving,
enough
yeah.
balancing.
And also I think your balance is evolving, because your players change, right? And so their inventories change and everything. So I think it's like, yeah, you can pre-program it or something, right? But at the same time, you need to like analyze what is going on. And also they can be, especially with live ops, right? So there's a pitfall that you have to avoid to like not to affect the economy that much, but still it can happen. And so, yeah, like your game balance maybe, or your economy can be affected. So
And I would actually argue that your game shouldn't be perfectly balanced. I think sometimes having those, different aspects of discovering that, oh, this gun's actually really powerful right now, or like I need to change my hero spec to be a fire mage instead of a frost mage, and different things like that can add a lot of depth and long-term retention to your game. It's a delicate balance, but I think some of those variations and changes in the meta is what keeps people coming and learning new aspects and mastering new parts of the game. So I think those are important too.
To provide a different lens on what you say, I love the idea, and I think it definitely has its time and place. But as a LiveOps manager, when somebody would come with this idea, and of course it happens, but then I'm already losing my night's sleep thinking of like what happens when like we see this massive gap in the game. Like it becomes so obvious that unless you have this one frost mage or whatever you have imbalanced, and then your game is breaking, like how are we going to deal with that? Like, are we going to nerf him and piss off the players who bought him, or are we going to create a new thunder mage who's going to be a little bit more powerful?
Always create that new thunder mage.
Yeah,
right. Special offer, personalized offer. If you can buy the old thunder mage in the past 5 batches.
Offer.
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes to buy this offer, and you'll never see it again.
So we've got 10 years. How many different mages can we create?
Rainbow.
That's great. Cool. So last question that we'll go through. What is your number one tip for retaining users through LiveOps? The content and the events and the offers that you're giving to players. Ethan, would you like to start this one off?
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of different things I could say. This one it's a legendary lesson, not from directly my time on the team, but learning it from listening to them was once you have a really engaged elder player base, clear communication with your players is really important. Like the elder players in Legendary, if you're talking about retaining them event to event for months and years, like they want to plan ahead. They want to know what changes you're making. They don't want to be surprised in production. And so for that team, it's not about never innovating on event harnesses, never changing things up, but having a dialogue with your players so that they're prepared when things are changing and they know like how this event is different from the last one so that they can get the most fun out of it. That's something that I learned from that team that I wouldn't have expected. And like, I think probably then the simplest form of that is have a dialogue with your most devoted players so you know what's important to them so that you can make sure you're still doing what's important for you as a game maker in a business, but you're also understanding your player and helping retain them, you know, from month 38 to 39 to 40 to 41.
That's great. Antanina?
I think that's something we're also discussing during the podcast that we had, right? So I think it's important to find what your players like to do in the game, right? And so what actually makes them come back, you know? So this is like working with the community a lot, but also like finding that like whether it's a content, right? Whether it's a gameplay or something, right? So for every single game is different. And I think I gave you the example that, you know, in one of the games, right? It wasn't really the game, but they had this dragon, you know, changing his appearance every single day. So players keep coming just to see what's going to be the new dragon this day, right? So it really depends on the game, but I think the tip is going to be to find that thing that actually keep players coming back. So yeah, whether it's content or like whether it's what you do in the game. So
yeah. Adam?
Well, again, both of you already covered it. So I also was going to mention, be in touch with your community. I think that's absolutely crucial. And again, we talked about this during the podcast, but I said like try to, you know, your qualitative and quantitative data should support each other, right? So you have data, your players are saying one thing, and always use both. But just to add on top of what was already said, something that I struggle with personally, and I have to remind myself is, you know, games are supposed to be fun. And the way I see LiveOps, it's like the soul and the spirit of the game. Because ultimately, what LiveOps should be doing is showing your audience that, hey, this game that you love so much, that you spend so much time, is still alive and kicking, you know? Like, how many games do we all know that we love, but it's dead? There is no community, that you can't multiplayer, nothing. So, and sometimes, you know, I give myself the challenge, like, okay, I'm not gonna deep into the metrics so much. I'm not gonna be opening my dashboards. And I'm not gonna be, well, you know, just focusing on how our KPI is evolving day 2 of the event, you know? Sometimes I'll challenge myself, like, you know what? Let's just do a freaking nice event. You know, let's, you know, to remind ourselves that we are working in the games industry, and at the end of the day, this is every kid's dream, right? So it should be fun. It's not easy, believe me, it's not easy, but it's definitely a good challenge for mindset when you're in LiveOps.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like I learned a lot, had a lot of fun. Are there any additional final thoughts you guys have before we? All right, I think we're good. All right, yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.